Yeah. Welcome to Shine in the Darkness, and we have two local campus, city, town celebrities with us, Dick and Karen LaBrant. I'm Robert Smith, and we're just going to have a conversation today. You guys up for that?
Absolutely. Let's go, Robert.
You know, I've often wondered about you. You're a very shy person. Just kidding. Guys, if you don't mind, could I start out with just where you grew up? And ladies first.
Ohio till I was 8, and Mom and Daddy came down to Florida to visit family that were down here, and Daddy got sand in his shoes, and he came home and he says, I got to go back and get some more sand in my shoes. So we loaded up the family, he did. I was one of 4, number 3, and we came to Florida. And Daddy was a tool and die maker, so he never had to worry about getting a job. And had various jobs, but ended up at GE.
Now, were you guys in St. Pete?
We lived in South St. Pete until we found a home, and we found a home
Northeast.
in Northeast St. Petersburg, near the bay.
Okay. All right. And Dick, where did you grow up?
I grew up in St. Petersburg, but I was born in New Jersey during the Second World War. It's kind of a fun story. It was the Normandy invasion was planned, and when my mother went to the train station to catch a ride home to St. Pete, the federal governments take over during the war. They take over all the train stations and all the trucks. And she had to go back home and have me in New Jersey. I'm famous with my brothers who were all born in St. Petersburg at Mound Park Hospital, where I was going to be born. And I've been called a blank Yankee all my life by my 3 older brothers. So I missed being born here by a fraction. But I got down here by the time I was 2 months. So I consider myself a Southerner.
All right. And how did you two meet?
Well, I'll start it.
Oh, yeah, you can start it.
I'll start it. I was at Northeast High School in Northeast St. Pete, and I was a senior. During my junior year, my uncles had me join talked my mom, said, they called me Dickie back then, get Dickie in the service, there's trouble in Asia. Knew nothing about that. That goes into another story. But so I'd been to boot camp, and in 1962, when my graduation came up, they allowed us to come back to school one time. It was a lot of high schools did it. You could come back and say hi to the ones that were behind you in different clubs and so forth. So I went back for the dance in the sock hop in the gym. Went back to Northeast High School and spotted this cute little girl dancing on the dance floor. And I said, who is that cute little girl with that guy? It says, she's with him. And they said, don't worry about him. That's her brother. They dance together all the time. So I was not real bold, but I did go up and approach her. And
He wasn't real bold. He followed me. My girlfriend was 16 at the time. I was only 15. And she had the car. And he followed us out to the car and wanted me
to say goodbye.
Wanted me to kiss him.
Just a little kiss.
And I said, I don't know who you are, and I'm not kissing a stranger. And, 15, what did I know?
Right. And I wasn't that serious about it. But that was a good thing that she said no, because it showed her that she was very conservative, right?
Yeah. And so what happened after that?
Well, so then I was gone. We were drafted early. I was promised that I wouldn't have to go because I'd done my boot camp and so forth, and it was going to be months away. And the reason I was in the Navy, because my uncles were both in the Navy in World War II, and they said, do it, there's trouble in Asia, which went right over my head. had no clue what they were talking about, but I really respected my uncles. They were both bankers and educated at Vanderbilt University, and they were my heroes. So I did what they said, and told my mother he'll be safer that way. I had no clue what they meant, but sure enough, because of the Vietnam thing, they activated us early. They said we'd have 3 months to say goodbye. I think we had 30 days. Wow. We were, our contract was void and a new contract came in, and I ended up on a bus heading for active duty and ended up in Little Creek, Virginia on an LST, which is an old ship from World War II.
And then he had Liberty, and he came home. And in the meantime, I wanted to know who this guy was. Well, I found out pretty quick because he was one of the most popular guys in high school and won the award as the most humorous of Northeast High School.
Surprise.
And a lot of people knew him. And
my stock was rising.
I thought, you know, maybe I'll get to see him sometime. And when he came home, he looked me up.
I did have a leave because they were behind the scenes. Everything was going. It was during the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is, most people don't even know about. It's a time in history that's been kind of forgotten. Mm-hmm. I had no clue. At the time, I can now talk about it intellectually, but they were putting together all kinds of forces because the Russians had put in the missiles just south of us. And my first assignment on the ship was to go to Cuba. Our ship brought Marines to Guantanamo Bay, which is Cuba. You know, we kept that land when we opened it up to the Cubans on the island of Cuba. But Guantanamo, we decided we'd make it an American base. So I was going back and forth like I was. I was on a ship delivering Marines to shore up the forces down there. So when I did come home, I did get a leave. They stopped that for a while. You know, when the negotiations were going on, and I
was
contacted my sweetheart.
Right.
To be. We weren't close yet.
Right. And he found out that I loved to ski, and he loved to ski, and I lived right off the bay where everybody skied from Northeast High School in the area. And when
was it Shore Acres?
Shore Acres.
And what was the other place?
And see, I had
the bridge. Shore Acres and what was that called? Where the rich people live.
I know.
Terra Verde?
No.
This is way downtown. Snell Isle.
Snell Isle.
Got
Snell
it.
Isle.
Okay.
And I have been skiing on the bay forever because my daddy had a boat and taught us to ski when we were just little. And he found out that I could ski right off the shore in a slalom.
Whoa.
And he thought that was pretty cool.
That's really
cool. And he could ski
Standing
barefoot.
on the shore, and the boat goes real fast. They leave slack in the line, and she'd go. I said, I'm in love.
And then I became in love, too, because he was able to barefoot ski, which my brothers could do, but I never could. So... Did
you say barefoot ski?
Yes.
Yes, I could. One of the few.
So we found that we were, and Mama wouldn't let me date him, but during the day she would let me go off skiing because she knows that's my territory and I was safe there. And my girlfriend was always there as well. But that's pretty much how we were meeting and getting to like each other and being able to play with each other in a sport that we both were fond of. And then Mom and Daddy let me call him when he went home, went back to the Navy once a week. Mm-hmm. And back then it cost money, long distance. So Mom said you can talk to him for 10 minutes once a week.
Wow.
And so we communicated in the next year. And of course, now I wasn't 15, and he arrives back home, and I'm 18.
Whoa. That happened fast.
Well, the time is she was 16 when I met her, and past 16, probably 16 and a half. Then a year passed. Now she's 17 and a half. and I'm on active duty, and we're staying in touch, not heavily, but a letter here and a letter there. But I still had it in my mind. I will get a leave, or I will be discharged after. And then I got an early out because of they ramped up all the forces. So what they did, the contract, you always sign a contract. All the services do that. And my contract was cut short of 3 years because they were emptying the forces, and the draft had started, so they were bringing in now permanent people they could have for 4 years.
Right.
And so a whole bunch of us got called out. I remember doing my job, I had, thank goodness for Northeast High School, I had learned how to type. And they lost their 2 men in the ship's office for the captain and everything. And they looked at the records and found out I could type. Mm-hmm. So I was a typist. Mm-hmm. I got off the deck crew.
In air conditioning.
And into the air conditioning down in Panama.
Sure that wasn't planned.
Yeah, we were stationed down in Panama to guard the canal. Not us. We would take the troops down, but the ship was there. And
so I got him home early.
She got him home. Yeah. Got me home early because what it was, they actually, many times, they will follow a contract. I had the 3 years to go, and they could have made me stay. But because they cleaned all the troops out, it wasn't just the Navy, it was the Army and the Marines. Get those guys, get them home, and then get the 4-year guys or 3-year guys so they can begin what they thought was going to be a battle.
Got it.
And it was, because that's when Vietnam started. But I missed Vietnam by a hair.
And we didn't appreciate that at the time.
Right.
But as time went on, we always said, it was wonderful that he didn't have to experience that.
So you get him back on the turf in Pinellas County.
Yep.
And then what was that next meeting like?
Oh, well, he invited me to a gala, one of his cousins.
And you're 18.
I'm 18.
All right. Just for the record,
18.
she's of age.
She's of age.
And Mama lets me go to this fancy, what was it called? Cotillion.
Whoa.
And Mama
Back
made
then
me.
It was a big deal. You went to, it's still there, the, what's the name of the place downtown St. Pete?
Yes.
It's been going on since my mother's time in the teens. It's the
Coliseum.
Coliseum, the original Coliseum.
And his father's father put the floor in that Coliseum.
Wow.
He was a carpenter. We had a little bit of a touch
Wow.
there. Yeah, he used to be a master carpenter.
We were very proud of that. But there I was. My mother had made me a dress. I can never forget it, blue. Back then it was, long, and wore gloves.
Ooh.
And
I went to a place that I'd never been before. And it
we
was,
call them the Tatas were there.
Right.
Why I was there was because my mom had good connections.
And he was with me. And I thought, wow, this is nice. I got to meet his family, his uncles, their daughters that were debutantes. And it was fun. It was fun. So I got something different there. And the good news about that is it went from skiing friends to my mother maybe liking him a little bit more.
Whoa. Big move.
Big change there.
Heard some of the last names because my family, my mother graduated from, and my father graduated from St. Pete High School back in the teens. Wow. So by being, it's the only high school in St. Petersburg, that was it. And in fact, there's some of them, I think my dad was actually in the little St. Pete High School. They were building the big one. They had a little one, and it ended up being called Mirror Lake Junior High School because they went out and built this gorgeous high school way out on Fifth Avenue, which wasn't that far out then. But because they were all there, they were all St. Pete people, that everybody knew everybody.
Right.
So you could get, just do stuff.
And I had fallen in love with his family. His mom and daddy were just wonderful. He lived in an old home built with
Farmhouse.
coquina foundation.
You know what those are? Coquina blocks.
Like cinder
Yes.
blocks?
Yeah.
Like cinder blocks,
But
but they
they're-
put coquinas
they were-
in because they didn't have enough cement, so they
Right.
mixed the coquina animal. They bake them and clean them, and so the coquinas would be in them, and then it would save money for not having to put the concrete in them because those people were poor in the
Right.
20s and 30s, and that's when the house was built.
Right. Wow.
But I love the atmosphere they had. I was invited for dinner and got to know them. And one night for dinner,
Which story are you going to tell?
his father was so cute. He says, Karen, I really like the fact that you and Dick are dating. He said, but you keep them out kind of late at night. And I said, well, I have to be home at 11. And he looked at Dick.
This is
Busted.
this is one of our first
Busted.
breaks. Yeah.
Because he would drop me off, and there was a local place gathering of,
Let's
Fine
say
fellows.
yes,
More
wonderful
mature
men
Right.
friends.
Men.
Right.
Men.
Right. Right.
young men.
And I
Right.
found out that he would drop me off and go on there, which didn't bother me that
you do
much.
know you're rocking, don't you?
Yes, I know. I'm a grandmother.
Natural. Yeah.
Grandmother's
Just natural.
rock all
Yeah,
the time.
Yeah.
But that was, it was fun because it was part of what happened.
Right.
And then that same uncle that had asked him to go in and think about going into the service, he had a uncle that was a tax assessor. And we really, really liked each other. And if you can say at 18, I was in love, yes, I was in love. And
Well, it's very important. I'm going to add that because the tax assessor, he wasn't a tax assessor for like the county.
Right.
He was rewriting books that would be used nationally. He ended up being very famous. Warren Honeycutt was his name. And he had brought in a special routine that the Army Air used in Second World War, where they would fly over and take pictures. Like they'd get the terrain, they could spot the enemy tanks, or they could spot the enemy troops. He brought that back, put it into commercial, and that's where I got my job. He wanted me to go out, and they'd done a couple counties in Georgia. Georgia gave him permission to do it, rural counties.
so with that, he was going to go back to college. And pretty much we had decided we wanted to get married. And he said, when he came and told me, he says, now I'll be gone for about 6 months. He said, to get acclimated, get trained. He said, but I think that will be perfect because I can save all my money and then we can get married. And he said, we'll have to travel for several years. And I thought, what's the downside to that?
Right. Yeah.
Sounds fun to me.
So as he was doing that, I was working at Publix, Northeast Publix, and just carrying on
It was a new
and
corporation then.
calling him like I was before. Now he's in Georgia, was your first.
Georgia.
And
Blairsville.
Mom was not real excited about a wedding, about a dress for me. She didn't like the thought that I would not have a wedding there. And so I waited the 6 months, bought my own dress. A girlfriend was with me. And
Simple.
he had made all the plans. He had gotten the pastor, the church, the license in Walhalla, South Carolina. And his mom and dad, I was going to take a bus up. And his mom and daddy said, no, we're going to take you up.
My mother and father.
So
Oh,
here I was in
That
a
was
small car
a little touchy.
with my
It was
suitcase
a
packed,
Fiat, a four-door Fiat.
heading for Georgia with a cake on my lap
No way.
because one of his best friends' father owned a bakery. And I had a little 2-tier cake.
Miniature, just
No
looked like
way.
a big one.
So there I
Eloping
was.
with the cake.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Eloping
that's
with the
cool.
cake and his mom and daddy.
Oh my gosh.
And got to the
It was
hotel,
crazy.
and his mom and daddy had a room. I had a room, and Dick had a room with mom and daddy. And everything was done. The next day, all I had to do was put my makeup on, get my hair done, and be ready. And they surprised us because his aunt and uncle also were there. And after the service, we came
They were
back.
from South Carolina, so it wasn't a big drive.
We came back to the motel room, and we had the cake, and there was no place to put the cake, and I'll never forget it because I have a picture of it. The cake was put on top of the little TV stands. You know those little TVs?
yeah,
and
yeah.
on top of it, and there was our cake.
Yeah.
And
So that was our wedding reception.
yes,
Picturesque.
yes.
Yeah.
And then we were all by ourselves.
Oh,
and I
my.
hadn't seen him in 6 months.
Oh my.
And I was 18. And I think it was the best thing we ever did
Yep.
because I was away from my family, which was a big family. He was away from his family. We learned to do everything together.
Wow.
For 2 years, it was just
That.
it was just him and I. And then we traveled. We had 7 different places in 2 years that we traveled. And I think it was the catalyst of just enjoying each other. And I'll never forget in Athens, Tennessee, he would go off and then come back for lunch sometimes. But in
Lunch.
Athens, Tennessee,
Got it.
we were almost at the end of our time. And I got mad at him. And it was winter. And we were in a little 1-bedroom, 1-bath home, beautiful little area in Athens, and it has snowed. And
During the night,
I
everything
walked,
turned white. It was gorgeous.
I was mad. I can't even tell you why I was mad.
Over
I
something.
walked out that door, and I looked around, and everything was quiet, and everything was filled with snow. And I thought, where am I going to go? I don't know anybody here except my next door neighbor. And she was fun because she used to make wine out of peaches.
In her house.
And we thought that was just so cool.
Yeah.
But I went back in and said, honey, come out. Come out. You got to see how beautiful this is.
So the little thing that she was having, a snit, we don't even know what it was. Nobody ever does. It was over. Done.
And Dick always had a way when I got upset because he was a humorous person. I was his greatest audience. I laughed,
That's true.
and I laughed a lot because he is a very funny man.
I take that as a compliment.
And then I got pregnant, and all changed.